During the summer of 1863, the rolling countryside of southern Pennsylvania became the site of a battle destined to reshape the world's future. Sitting at a major road junction, the sleepy little town of Gettysburg would soon become a name known around the world. The American Civil War has been going on for 2 long years, and neither side is close to final victory. It is a highly controversial war, and angry citizens on both sides of the Mason-Dixon line are shouting for peace at any cost. Certain events, however, are taking place in the summer of 1863 that will change the direction of the war. Out of the hills to the northwest of Gettysburg comes the Confederate Army of Northern Virginia, 75,000 strong and under the command of General Robert E. Lee. With convincing victories at Fredericksburg and Chancellorsville, Lee is now moving his army northward through the Shenandoah Valley and into Pennsylvania, where he hopes to score a decisive victory on northern soil. The Union Army of the Potomac, under their new commander, General George Meade, has 2 major objectives: protect Washington, D.C., and seek and destroy Lee's army. Neither army knows the exact whereabouts of the other. This dilemma creates a strange geographical twist. As Southern troops approach Gettysburg from the north, Northern troops are advancing from the south. It is largely an accident that the conflict takes place at Gettysburg. While most of Lee's forces are concentrated near Cashtown, the Union Army is stretched all the way into Maryland. 10 roads intersect in or near Gettysburg, making it a major road junction. General Meade employs a cavalry patrol to make a scouting report. The Southern Army is living off the land, and there are rumors that Gettysburg has shoes, clothing, and other supplies. On June 30th, a Southern brigade looking for supplies spots a column of Union cavalry. Quickly withdrawing, they report the closeness of the Union Army. General Lee, stirred by a sense of victory, is ready for a showdown at Gettysburg. On the morning of July 1st, Northern lookouts stationed in the cupola of a Lutheran seminary just west of town sight the advancing Confederates. Once again, the bugle's shrill blast calls the soldier to battle. The deadliest of all dramas is about to begin. Man pitted against man, his whole effort aimed at wounding or killing his opponent. The stage is set, the curtain is going up. Near McPherson's barn, the 2 armies exchange shots, and the Battle of Gettysburg begins. By late afternoon, Union soldiers are badly outnumbered. Forced into a ragtag retreat, they converge on 2 hills just south of town called Culp's Hill and Cemetery Hill. Culp's Hill is a prominent knoll overlooking the town. The graveyard on Cemetery Hill will become the bulwark of the Union line. Ironically, a sign posted in the cemetery reads, "All persons using firearms in these grounds will be prosecuted with the utmost vigor of the law." Both hills are weakly defended on the evening of July 1st. Had General Lee pressed his advantage, the outcome of the battle might have been quite different. But the decision to attack is delayed and finally called off. During the night, federal reinforcements arrive. By morning, it is no longer a weak position. During the action on July 1st, a respected Union commander, General John F. Reynolds, was killed by a sharpshooter's bullet. He was replaced by General Abner Doubleday. whose name would later be associated with organized baseball. Incensed by the invasion of rebel soldiers, a 70-year-old former town constable picked up his rifle and fought recklessly with Federal troops. Wounded in 3 places, John Burns became a folk hero of the battle. As dawn breaks on July 2nd, the Confederates hold the town and have settled along a well-protected embankment called Seminary Ridge. The Union line begins at Culp's Hill, makes a semicircle around Cemetery Hill, and runs southwest along Cemetery Ridge. The left flank is extremely weak, and Little Round Top, with its strategic overlook, is largely unprotected. Lee's plan to assault both flanks is delayed until late afternoon. Meanwhile, part of the Union line moves up to a battle position near a peach orchard. When Confederate forces charge, a heavy artillery barrage momentarily drives them back. But reinforcements follow, and the Union line breaks. Fierce hand-to-hand fighting occurs in a wheat field. Again, Union troops are forced to retreat, scrambling through the rocks and tangles of Devil's Den, where once more bitter and bloody infighting takes place. Now, in a wild melee with confusion all around, the rebels surge for Little Round Top and victory. Union General G.K. Warren immediately recognizes the danger to this vital position. He snatches 2 brigades going into the Union line and rushes them to the top of the hill. After a long, grueling struggle, where the advantage changes hands several times, the rebels are driven back to Devil's Den. Little Round Top belongs to the Union Army. During the heat of the battle, Father William Corby, perched on a high boulder, gave absolution to a northern brigade of Irish Catholics. Nomine Patris et Filii et Spiritus Sancti. Amen. For many, it was the last prayer they would ever hear. That evening, as the setting sun bloodies the western sky, it reflects the crimson stains of human sacrifice that cover the slopes of Little Round Top and the fields below. A Union officer observes, "And how look these fields? They were beautiful this morning. They are desolate now. And there are the belongings of the soldiers, the knapsacks, muskets, and swords, the coats and caps, and all are sprinkled with blood. Men of Alabama lay quietly by the side of those of Minnesota, some composed with upturned faces, sleeping the last sleep, and some mutilated and frightful, survivors still and unwilling witnesses of the rage at Gettysburg." As darkness spreads over the battlefield, sharp attacks are made on the right flank of the Union line. Fortifications on Cemetery Hill are momentarily breached, but reinforcements arrive and the rebels are driven back. Both attacks on the Union flank have failed. Unfortunately for the South, one of the best flanking generals in military history now lay in his grave. Stonewall Jackson had been mortally wounded 2 months earlier at Chancellorsville. By July 3rd, the Union Army has a distinct military advantage. It controls virtually all of the high ground. That morning, as General Lee surveys his lines, he crystallizes a plan that will raise a minor Confederate officer to everlasting fame. Although General George Pickett's troops comprise only 1/2 of the striking force, the charge across an open field into the center of the Union line will always be remembered as Pickett's charge. General James Longstreet, one of Lee's corps commanders, protests strongly that no 15,000 men ever arrayed for battle could take that position. But Lee's decision is firm. The enemy is there, and that is where I shall strike him. On the morning of July 3rd, General Meade thoroughly inspects his front. From Little Round Top, he can see the long lines of massed Confederate batteries, a sure sign of attack. At 1 o'clock, 131 Confederate cannon let loose a barrage that is heard all the way to Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, 36 miles away. By 3 o'clock, Cemetery Ridge is white with shell bursts. Now, the dreadful sound of cannon fire ceases. For years afterwards, men will speak of the strange hush that spread over the battlefield. Southern infantrymen crouch quietly, waiting, wondering what fate is in store for them. Could any soldier foresee the grim outcome? Of the 12,000 men that will make the attack, more than 6,000 will not return. Colonel E.P. Alexander gives the signal, forward. Thus begins a death march 3/4 of a mile wide. As Southern troops march out across the open field, gaps show in the gray lines, but they close and the advance continues. Then, with a screaming rebel yell on their lips, 12,000 soldiers swing forward on the run like a great tidal wave, creating a tumult that seems to split the sky. With screams and shouts amid the gunfire, the two armies meet head-on in mortal combat. This sight is called the high water mark of the Confederacy. With the violent charge, Lee's army reached its peak, but Union troops held and the Confederates were turned back. The proud army of Northern Virginia would never again be the same. The full weight of failure was felt by Lee when he spoke in whispered anguish, "It's all my fault. It's all my fault." That night it rains, as though the gods are openly weeping over the 51,000 casualties that the battle has left in its wake. The South is now doomed to lose a war in which it is inferior to the North in men, guns, and supplies, indeed in everything but spirit. The Confederate Army retreats to the hills, heading for Virginia and the safety of friendly soil. Meade's army pursues, but cautiously. They are afraid the rebels, like a wounded tiger, might turn and strike. On July 4th, one day following the Battle of Gettysburg, Vicksburg surrenders. Only a month before, the South had been riding the pinnacle of success. Now Lee has failed at Gettysburg, and Vicksburg, the last Confederate stronghold on the Mississippi River, is lost. The South is exposed and bleeding. Yet nearly 2 years of hard fighting will remain before the Confederacy topples to its final destruction. Four months after the battle, the National Cemetery at Gettysburg is dedicated. The primary speaker, Edward Everett, speaks for over 2 hours. President Lincoln is also asked to say a few words, and his short talk becomes the most famous speech in American history.
77 years ago, our fathers brought forth on this continent a new nation, conceived in liberty and dedicated to the proposition that all men are created equal. Now we are engaged in a great civil war, testing whether that nation, or any nation so conceived and so dedicated, can long endure. We are met on a great battlefield of that war. We have come to dedicate a portion of that field as a final resting place for those who here gave their lives that that nation might live. It is altogether fitting and proper that we should do this. But in a larger sense, we cannot dedicate we cannot consecrate, we cannot hallow this ground. The brave men, living and dead, who struggled here, have consecrated it far above our poor power to add or detract. The world will little note nor long remember what we say here, but it can never forget what they did here. It is for us, the living, rather, to be dedicated here to the unfinished work which they who fought here have thus far so nobly advanced. It is rather for us to be here dedicated to the great task remaining before us, that from these honored dead we take increased devotion to that cause for which they gave the last full measure of devotion. That we here highly resolve that these dead shall not have died in vain, that this nation, under God, shall have a new birth of freedom, and that government of the people, by the people, for the people, shall not perish from the earth.